The void stretched infinitely, cold and uncaring, as the exploration vessel Dauntless slid across the silence of a newly charted system. Stars shimmered in the backdrop, indifferent witnesses to humanity's attempt at permanence among them. Within the ship, the hum of engines and the whisper of circulating air were the only reminders of home, fragile sounds against the immensity beyond. Captain Arya Cade stood at the forward viewport, hands clasped behind her back, her gaze fixed on the swirling band of the gas giant dominating the view. She was not a woman easily impressed, yet the storming colors, a maelstrom of amber, violet, and stormlit green, pulled at something in her chest. Beauty had never been the problem. Survival was. Dr. Jiro Takeda leaned forward from the science station, his eyes alight. The readings are unlike anything in our archives. The energy flux in orbit doesn't correspond to any natural phenomenon. We may be looking at artificial construction. His voice carried excitement, a child discovering a long-hidden toy. He had joined this mission not for glory, but for discovery, and moments like this justified every risk. Commander Elias Vorn, however, remained motionless at his post near the tactical console. His face was sharp, whether by years of combat service, and his distrust of wonder showed in the tight line of his jaw. Artificial, natural doesn't matter, he said flatly. We shouldn't be here without knowing what we're stepping into. Unknown signals around a gas giant don't scream, "Welcome, man, to me." Arya let their words hang in the charged air. She was used to this rhythm between them. Jiro reaching for the stars, Elias clinging to the ground. Both were necessary, both exhausting. Her own instincts often straddled the line, but command demanded she lean neither way too quickly. She adjusted her stance and gave the order. Put on main screen. The central display flickered, resolving into an image that hushed the bridge. Hanging against the storm-lit backdrop of the gas giant was a structure so vast it seemed to defy reason. A lattice of blackened material stretched for kilometers, its edges geometric yet fractured, as if grown rather than built. Thin veins of pale light pulsed across its surface, slow and deliberate, like the heartbeat of a slumbering giant. Jiro exhaled audibly, reverence lacing his tone. "It's alive." Or wants us to think it is, Elias muttered, crossing his arms. Arya studied the construct, her thoughts sharpened by the weight of command. Humanity's first permanent exploration fleet had set out to expand the boundaries of knowledge and presence. Yet she knew too well that expansion often invited confrontation. Still, what floated before them was no derelict. Something inside was awake. "Any transmissions?" she asked. "None directed at us," Jiro answered after a pause, his fingers darting across the console. "But there's a repeating signal in a mathematical sequence. Prime numbers. Deliberate." His eyes flickered up, shining with conviction. "This is first contact." Elias scoffed. "Or bait, and we're the fish stupid enough to swim closer." The captain ignored his skepticism, though it mirrored her own buried unease. "Bring us within observation range." No further. As the Dauntless edged closer, the construct seemed to respond. The pulses of light grew brighter, synchronized, as if acknowledging their presence. For the first time in days, silence fell over the bridge. Not the silence of machinery, but of human breath held tight in collective awe or fear. Jiro broke it with a whisper. "They know we're here." The signal shifted, the rhythm accelerating, evolving. Suddenly, across the display, a cascade of symbols appeared. They were not random. Geometric lines, recursive patterns, symmetrical shapes. Language built from logic rather than culture. A universal invitation. "Translation's impossible without more data," Jiro said, though his grin betrayed eagerness. "But this is communication." Elias rose from his seat, his voice sharp. "Captain, we need to reconsider. That thing is older than anything we've ever encountered, and it just turned its eyes on us. If it wanted us gone, we'd already be stardust. It's toying with us, testing us." Arya did not dismiss him. She could feel the pressure mounting with each flicker of alien light, each shift in that calculated message. Elias saw threats everywhere, but this time she could not deny his words carried weight. The galaxy had never granted humanity kindness for free. Yet Jiro's certainty tugged at her. If they turned away now, They might never again stand at the threshold of something so monumental. She turned from the screen to face them both. We didn't come out here to run. We came to know what waits beyond our reach. But we won't walk blind. No hasty moves, no assumptions. We send probes first. Reluctantly, Elias gave a short nod. Jiro, unable to mask his enthusiasm, began configuring the scans. Soon, a cluster of drones slipped free from the Dauntless. Tiny sparks against the void, drifting toward the colossal construct. The ship's crew watched through cameras as the drones crossed the threshold of proximity. The alien structure stirred. Segments of its exterior shifted soundlessly, revealing cavernous openings that were not present before. The drones adjusted course automatically, pulled inside by a force they could not resist. Data streamed back in bursts, readings off the charts, energy level spiking, then abruptly silence. Every feed cut to black. The bridge filled with a quiet dread. Jiro's hands hovered over the console, frozen in disbelief. They took them. They're gone. Elias slammed his fist against the bulkhead. That's it. That's the proof we needed. We're next if we don't pull back now. Arya stared at the dark screen. Her reflection ghosted across the dead feed. Inside, her mind turned over possibilities faster than words could form. This was no abandoned relic. It was listening, watching, deciding, and for reasons she could not name, it had opened itself not to destroy them, but to invite them. She straightened, her voice steady though her pulse quickened. It's waiting for us. The words hung heavy in the air, undeniable. The construct's vast gates, now open, glowed with a faint inner light, an invitation into depths unknown. For the first time, Elias's expression faltered, his certainty challenged by something he could not frame as mere threat. Jiro's gaze burned with yearning, convinced history was within reach. Arya felt the weight of both their stares, the weight of her choice, and the weight of humanity's first step into an alien heart. The Dauntless drifted before the threshold, the void around it poised in expectation. Arya drew in a slow breath, knowing whatever decision came next would define far more than the lives aboard her ship. And still, the gates yawned wider, patient, inevitable. The decision was made before anyone spoke it aloud. The construct had invited them, and to turn away now would reduce humanity's first step into irrelevance. Captain Arya Cade stood in the airlock, armored suit sealed, helmet tucked beneath her arm. Her breath was measured, steady, though the weight in her chest betrayed the truth. She was walking into something vast and deliberate, something that had already swallowed their drones without resistance. Beside her, Dr. Jiro Takeda fidgeted with his wrist display, fingers quick and eager, while Commander Elias Vorn performed last checks with the rigid precision of a soldier who trusted nothing. The hatch opened with a hiss, releasing them into the shuttle that would carry them across the Gulf. The construct loomed in the viewport like a slumbering beast, its colossal entrance glowing with a steady radiance. Neither warm nor cold, but something beyond human perception. Arya kept her voice low as she gave the order to launch. The shuttle detached smoothly, silence pressing it until only the thrumming of engines reminded them they had not slipped into a dream. Inside the cabin, Jiro's excitement spilled through the comms. We are standing at the edge of history. This is what we've always hoped for, an intelligence that predates us, that might understand the universe in ways we can't yet imagine. Elias didn't turn his head. His voice carried steel. Or one that understands destruction better than we ever could. Don't mistake an open door for an open hand. Arya closed her eyes briefly, centering herself between them. Their conflict was not just noise. It was embodiment of humanity's split soul. Curiosity and fear, daring and caution, bound together and pulling in opposite directions. She needed both to stay alive. The shuttle passed into the threshold. Light rippled across its hull, not like illumination, but as though reality itself was acknowledging their entry. The moment they crossed, gravity shifted. The craft dipped and then stabilized, caught in a field that defied explanation. Jiro muttered to himself, recording every sensation. Elias's hand hovered near the weapon at his side, though he knew bullets meant nothing here. The shuttle settled inside a cavernous chamber. The walls curved in fractal patterns, smooth surfaces folding into one another like frozen waves. They glowed faintly, not from lamps or fixtures, but from material itself, alive with energy. No dust, no debris, no sign of decay, despite its ancient design. It was less a building and more a body. They stepped out, boots echoing against a floor that was neither metal nor stone, but something in between. The air was breathable, though it carried a sharp taste, as if filtered through unfamiliar lungs. Then it appeared. A figure rose from the center of the chamber, coalescing out of shimmering fragments of light. It was tall, vaguely humanoid, but its proportions shifted with every heartbeat, as though uncertain of which form to adopt. When it spoke, its voice was layered, deep and resonant, yet threaded with tones that brush against memory like half-remembered songs. "I am curator," it said, the words translated not by sound but by thought, slipping seamlessly into their minds. "Guardian of the archive, preserver of what was lost." Arya tightened her grip on her helmet. "You knew we would come." The curator inclined its head, its expression unreadable. "All who wander this galaxy are drawn here eventually. You are not the first to arrive. You may not be the last." Jiro stepped forward, unable to contain himself. "This archive, what does it hold? Knowledge? History? Technology? We seek to understand, to learn." The curator's form shimmered, shifting subtly in response. "It holds judgment. My creators are gone, consumed by their own hungers. I remain to ensure that those who follow do not repeat their mistakes." Elias's jaw clenched. "And if you decide we will?" The chamber pulsed faintly with light. "Then you will not leave." The weight of the words pressed into their bones. Jiro faltered, but Arya steadied him with a glance. She could feel the shape of the conflict emerging. This was no simple meeting. The curator was not a guide, but a gatekeeper, and humanity stood at the threshold of acceptance or annihilation. "On what basis do you judge us?" Arya asked, her voice calm though her heart beat hard. "On what you are," the curator replied. "Your choices, your truths, the patterns you leave behind." The chamber shifted around them. Walls dissolved into vast illusions, and suddenly they stood in a field of stars. Vision wrapped them, no longer confined by the room's dimensions. Images flickered through the void. Wars raging across Earth's history, mushroom clouds unfurling, cities consumed by fire. The screams of past centuries echoed without sound. Jiro gasped, "You've seen us." "I have seen what you do when tested," the curator intoned. "Violence is your nature. Domination your instinct. My creators burned themselves from existence the same way. I will not permit it to happen again." Elias's hand went to his weapon instinctively, but Arya raised hers to stop him. Violence here would only confirm the judgment. Still, she could not deny the accusation. Humanity's history was drenched in blood, its victories as cruel as its failures. But that was not all they were. "You see only half the story," she said. The stars flickered, shifting now to other visions. People rebuilding shattered cities, hands pulling strangers from rubble, children laughing amid hardship, explorers reaching beyond their cradle not to conquer, but to discover. The curator's form wavered, uncertain. Contradictions. "You are both creator and destroyer, both healer and butcher." Jiro stepped forward again, eyes wide with passion. "That's exactly why we're different. We're not fixed to one path. We fall, but we rise. We break, but we rebuild. It's our flaws that define us as much as our triumphs." For a moment, silence stretched. The curator tilted its head, as though peering through layers unseen. Then the chamber darkened, the visions vanishing. Its voice carried finality. "Then you will be tested." The floor beneath them trembled. Paths opened in 3 directions, each illuminated by a harsh, cold light. "Prove your claim," the curator said. "Show me that you are not bound to destruction. Survive the trials, and you may carry the archive's truth with you. Fail, and your species will never rise beyond its cage." Arya felt the pull of decision settling on her shoulders once again. The central conflict was no longer hypothetical. It had become a trial written into the marrow of their mission. Humanity stood in judgment, and she, Jiro, and Elias would bear the weight of proving their worth. As the paths loomed before them, each radiating the promise of peril, Arya exhaled slowly and spoke with quiet resolve. Then we walk. And together, they step forward into the unknown crucible that would decide whether humanity deserved the stars at all. The passage closed behind them with thunderous finality, sealing the three into a corridor that bent in ways their minds resisted. The walls seemed alive, pulsing faintly with veins of light, every step echoing as the construct itself listened. Arya led with measured strides, the weight of command pressing heavier with each breath. Jiro followed close, wide-eyed, torn between awe and fear, while Elias kept his weapon raised, though deep down he knew it was little more than a charm against inevitability. The corridor split into 3 chambers, each forming a sphere of its own reality. The curator's voice resonated around them, not from one place, but from everywhere at once. Your essence will be tested, not in strength of arms, but in truth of being. Arya stepped first into her trial. The chamber dissolved into the wreckage of a past mission, one that had scarred her soul. Flames licked at twisted metal. Screams echoed from corridors collapsing in smoke. She saw the faces of her crew, the ones she had failed to save, their eyes heavy with accusation. Her knees weakened, yet she forced herself forward. A familiar voice called out, her second-in-command from years ago, bloodied, reaching. She remembered this moment, remembered turning away to save the ship rather than the individual. Guilt had haunted her since. The phantom clutched her arm. You chose the ship over us. Tell me, Captain, what are we worth to you now? Her throat tightened, but she forced herself to meet the gaze. I made the choice I had to, and I've carried it every day since. Our worth isn't measured by survival alone. It's measured by what we leave behind. I failed you, but I will not fail again. The vision burned away, leaving only silence and a curator's whisper. Acknowledgement of failure, acceptance of burden. You endure. Elsewhere, Jiro stood in a chamber filled with alien ruins, towering and broken, echoes of civilizations long dead. Around him, specters of countless species flickered, rising and collapsing in endless loops of war and ruin. Their voices pressed against him, each one whispering the same truth. Destruction is inevitable. He fell to his knees, overwhelmed by the sheer scope of failure written across the stars. You are a child among corpses, the curator said. What makes you believe your kind will be different? Jiro pressed his hand against the shifting ground, his breath ragged. He wanted to deny it, to scream that humanity was special, but the weight of evidence threatened to crush his spirit. Still, a spark within him refused to yield. He lifted his head, voice trembling yet unbroken. Because we remember, we carry our failures forward. Every extinction you show me, every ruin, they live again through us when we study them. We are not perfect, but we do not erase. We learn. That is why we endure. The specters faded, leaving him alone with the echo of his own words. And in his chamber, Elias found himself confronted with battlefield. Broken soldiers sprawled around him, men and women he had commanded. His weapon was heavy in his hands, slick with blood not his own. Above the carnage, the curator's voice thundered. You survive by dominance. Every victory you have claimed is written in others' deaths. Do you deny this nature? Elias gritted his teeth, gripping the weapon harder. He had lived by harsh decisions, trading lives for victory, believing survival justified all costs. But the faces around him stared up with empty eyes, demanding an answer he could no longer evade. He dropped the weapon, its clatter deafening in the stillness. No, he said at last, voice raw. I don't deny it, but survival without honor is rot. I've done what I had to, but I will not call it noble. If humanity is to rise, it must be more than the sum of its violence. The battlefield dissolved, and Elias stood alone, chest heaving. The three returned to the central corridor, each marked by their trial. They said nothing at first, but in their eyes was an unspoken recognition. They had been cut to their cores and had not broken. The curator manifested before them, its form more solid now, less shifting. It regarded them with a gaze that felt both ancient and unbearably close. You are contradiction, fragile yet unyielding, violent yet compassionate. My creators saw perfection and destroyed themselves. You are imperfection embodied, and yet you persist. Arya lifted her chin. Then you see us for what we are. The curator's light flickered, uncertain, as if its programming warred within itself. If I release you, your kind may bring ruin beyond the system. If I destroy you, perhaps others will be spared. Both paths hold truth. Jiro stepped forward, voice quiet but steady. Then trust us with the burden. Judge us not by what we were, but by what we choose to become. Elias added, and if we fail, then let the stars themselves condemn us. But don't deny us the chance to try. The silence stretched long, as though the construct itself held its breath. Then the curator's form dimmed, its voice softer. Very well. You will go. Carry what you have seen, and know that my gaze will remain. Humanity walks a knife's edge, and your steps will echo beyond your time. The walls shifted, opening the path back to their shuttle. The chambers glowed dim to a steady heartbeat, no longer threatening, but not welcoming either. It was a warning wrapped in reprieve. As they boarded the shuttle, Arya allowed herself a final look at the vast structure. Its gates sealed once more, locking secrets within, but its presence lingered in her chest. She knew humanity had not been absolved, only spared. Their future remained unwritten, and the weight of proving themselves lay heavier than ever. The shuttle docked with the Dauntless, the crew waiting with anxious faces. Arya stepped onto the deck. Her voice firm though her body ached with the strain of what they had endured. We carry knowledge now and responsibility. We've been judged and we've been spared. What we do next will decide if that mercy lasts. In the silence that followed, each member of the crew felt the enormity of her words. They had survived the crucible, but the true trial, the shaping of humanity's legacy, lay ahead. As the Dauntless turned away from the gas giant and the silent construct, the stars stretched out before them, vast and unyielding. Arya closed her eyes, letting the hum of the engines remind her that they still moved forward, still dared. Somewhere in the void, the curator watched, and humanity, flawed yet unbroken, pressed onward into the endless dark. The return journey carried none of the exhilaration that usually accompanied survival. The Dauntless drifted through the void, its engines a low thrum beneath the tension that clung to every corridor. Humanity had been judged and spared, but the crew could not escape the lingering shadow of that trial. Captain Arya Cade sat in her quarters, staring at the flickering holographic record of their encounter. The curator's final words echoed in her mind like a refrain she could not silence. You walk a knife's edge. She had carried responsibility all her life, but never had the burden felt this heavy. A soft chime broke the silence. Jiro entered, his face pale but his eyes still bright with the unshaken hunger of discovery. He carried a datapad clutched against his chest, as though it were both shield and treasure. Captain, he said, his voice tentative, I've analyzed what fragment of data I could pull from the archive before it cut us off. There's more, much more. What we saw wasn't the full truth. Arya turned weary but attentive. Explain. He set the pad on the table, images flashing across it. Alien scripts, schematics, star charts scattered with ominous red markings. The curator wasn't only preserving knowledge, it was preparing. It cataloged every extinction event it witnessed, but it wasn't passive. It interfered. It tested species across eons, and when they failed, it ended them. His voice shook, not from fear, but from awe. We weren't the first. We were just the latest. Arya absorbed the words, her mind tightening around their implications. Humanity hadn't been offered a chance by mercy. It had been permitted to live because they had met some opaque criteria. They were participants in a pattern as old as the stars. And the others? She asked quietly. Jiro hesitated before answering. None survived. The words hung between them like a guillotine. Meanwhile, Elias stood in the observation deck, hands clasped behind his back, his eyes locked on the shrinking silhouette of the construct. He had expected to feel relief, but all he carried was fury. The idea that humanity's fate could be dictated by some ancient remnant of a dead species gnawed at him like acid. When Arya joined him, he spoke without turning. We pass its test today. What happens when we stumble tomorrow? Do we live forever under its shadow, waiting for judgment like children before a stern parent? Arya considered the question, knowing it was more than rhetoric. We live knowing the truth, she replied. that we are being measured, and maybe that's what we need. Elias turned sharply, anger flashing in his eyes. We need freedom, not chains. We've fought wars to claim our own destiny. I won't accept that the stars themselves belong to a machine that thinks it knows us better than we do. Their eyes locked, fire against iron. Jiro entered behind them, voice breaking the tension. It's worse than that. The archive contained records of an approaching pattern, a signal spreading across multiple systems. The curator called it contagion. Something vast is stirring out there, something that consumed its makers. And it's moving again. The room fell silent, the gravity of his words eclipsing their conflict. Aria's gaze hardened, the weariness in her eyes replaced by grim focus. Humanity was not only judged, it was being warned. The crew gathered in the briefing hall, every face marked by uncertainty. Aria stood at the center, her voice steady but heavy with truth. She told them of the archive's revelation, of civilizations tested and extinguished, of a contagion that stirred beyond the edges of mapped space. She did not soften the words. She could not. We have been spared, but not absolved. The curator will watch us, and the universe will test us again. The question is not whether we are worthy of survival. It is whether we are prepared. Murmurs rippled through the hall, fear mingling with defiance. One young officer spoke aloud what others whispered. Then what's the point? If we're doomed to fail, why fight at all? Aria looked across the faces, seeing herself reflected in their doubt. Her voice cut through the air like tempered steel. Because we are human. Because we fall and we rise again. Because if the universe demands we prove ourselves, then we will meet that demand not with submission, but with resolve. We do not endure because we are flawless. We endure because we refuse to stop. The word steadied them, not banish fear, but forged it into resolve. Elias's eyes softened, though his jaw remained hard. Jiro's hands tightened around his datapad, as though holding onto a spark of light in the dark. Later, when the hall was empty, Aria stood alone at the viewport. The stars stretched infinite, their cold beauty a reminder of both insignificance and possibility. She touched the glass, as if the gesture could bridge the gulf. Behind her, Elias spoke quietly. So what now? She did not turn. Now we prepare. We spread the word. We build. We learn. The curator may judge us, but it will not define us. If something is coming, then humanity must be ready to face it. Elias gave a low grunt, part disapproval, part respect. And if we fail? Aria's reflection met his in the glass, her eyes unyielding. Then we fail on our terms, not theirs. The Dauntless sailed on, a lone spark in a vast night, carrying a crew who bore the weight of humanity's future. Behind them, the alien construct slumbered, its gaze lingering unseen, while somewhere beyond known space, a contagion stirred like a storm on the horizon. The chapter of judgment had ended, but a darker story waited, its pages unwritten. Humanity had been spared, for now, but the stars whispered of trials yet to come, and of choices that would carve their legacy across eternity.